Yang, hello, I am the Dark Fae, and welcome back to Confessions of a First-Time Dungeon Master. If you missed last time's session, I'll put a link to it here. That'd be session 10, because we're on to session 11, and we're getting into one of the more interesting parts of the world, the Wickhansel Marshes, swamp area. So, let's begin. Alright, so for this session, I prepped maybe a little bit more swamp stuff than I needed to, since I knew they had about a half day before actually getting into the swamp, and they mentioned to me a little bit about what they kind of wanted to do to prepare. So I was able to prep like a little bit of that. I didn't do too much extensively, since it was pretty simple roleplay, I suppose. But one of the things that came up was they wanted to kind of do more investigation about the swamp, or this kind of quest that they're on. They wanted to see if they could learn more about either the mushroom sample itself or what happened to Miss Corsilvea, the guy who was poisoned. But the thing is, like, they just found him, and they kind of like just delivered these samples, so it definitely makes sense to want to research and want to know as much about what you're trying to discover or are on a quest about. But like, not that much time has passed, and this like substance and this like poisoning is very unfamiliar to the people in Scorian Keep, so it takes a lot of time for them to like research or be able to like really find any sort of solution. So it felt a little bit that like, yes, it was a good idea for them to do this, but like there weren't really that many results that I could give them that would be very fruitful. I think so. I guess I can go kind of in turn by turn. So Valhyri, our druid, who is from the Forest of Rot and very interested in these kinds of plants and poisons and like kind of things that are a bit off because her forest is corrupted. But she wanted to go to Lady Germain, the apothecaries, and find out more about the mushroom, see like what kind of progress Lady had made. But again, it's only been like a few hours, so there's not a whole lot that she has found out. So she wanted to kind of stay and help research, and also I kind of gave her a botany book about plants that come from the Wickhansel Marshes. Had her roll, I think, a nature check, and she rolled pretty high, so I gave her the information that these mushrooms are called Drusqual's Kiss. Alhazar Drusqual is a saint of Aremsia. He is a saint of like poisons and venoms and stuff like that. So that's kind of where this mushroom's like poisonous capabilities like came from. They're originally kind of used for sleeping potions, and like ingesting too much of it will knock you out, kind of. But then she kind of spent the rest of the time kind of trying to reverse engineer the like vial of poisonous spices that had originally kind of gone through the city, or gone through Ilara's bakery, like that original poison that was causing people to vomit out like in the fungi, basically. So she was able to find out some things, but again, the scraps of recipe that they have aren't complete, so they don't necessarily have that yet. So that's what Valhyri did. Umric, he is our death cleric, and he wanted to go to the Church of Trin, which is where the castle guard took Miss Gore to kind of be treated or isolated, sort of. Very apt in these isolation times. But for this, I'm having a little bit of trouble, honestly, with the poison/disease that I made, and like the rules is written for spells like Lesser Restoration or Greater Restoration that can end poison, disease, that kind of a thing. Because, spoilers, but it'll be too late by the time my players get back to the keep. So, basically, I had the priests of the church. They tried Lesser Restoration, Greater Restoration. That didn't work, and so eventually they put him into... they cast Feign Death on him, which is a ritual, or not a spell, that will put somebody in like a catatonic state, basically, and it halts all progression of poison or disease in the body for, I want to say 10 days? I forget exactly the duration, but essentially they can keep casting Feign Death on him, which is kind of funny because Mizkor is already kind of in that catatonic state, but that's due to whatever is going on inside him. So the thing is, he was first poisoned and then diseased by this exposure to this poison / mushroom. And the way that I created this disease is that if you are consistently exposed to this poison, you have to make a series of saving throws. If you fail 2 saving throws, you become diseased after a certain number of days if you haven't. Actually, let me double check this. Okay, yeah, so after, I think I said 1d6 or 1d8 days, if you haven't been cured of this disease, then, like, you become part of the contagion, and you can start, that's when you kind of start vomiting out the spores / fungi, and causing it to spread to other people. If you fail a 3rd saving throw, that happens, let me see, the 3rd failure would happen, I think, 1d4 days or something like that after you start coughing things out. Timelines are a little bit iffy, I'm still playing with it a bit, but the effects I have done. So after you fail a 3rd saving throw, then that's when you fall into this catatonic state that Mizkor is in. And at this point, like, the spores and the fungi have taken root in the body, and basically every 12 hours you have to make a Constitution saving throw, or you kind of burst into you're kind of a mushroom bomb, and you burst and your insides will kind of sprout mushrooms and spores go everywhere. But now I'm wondering if, like, at this 3rd stage, is it curable or not? Because to me, a disease is different than having mushrooms living in your body. If that distinction makes sense. Because the disease, like, during those days while you are, like, coughing out spores and vomiting and all that, that is the time when it can be cured. So maybe there shouldn't be a 3rd saving throw at all. No, I think there should be. Because then I think if you fail that 3rd saving throw, that you've basically died, but, like, the infection is keeping your body alive in order just to sustain the growth of these, and maybe the longer. But then why would you make a Constitution saving throw? I guess to prolong how long it would be to burst. But anyways, so a little bit confused as to how to handle that, because he's in the burst state. So they might come back to a church that's decimated. Who knows? It's possible. I'll have to tweak it a little bit. But anyways, so that's what Umric did. So he didn't really find anything useful because nobody knows what the antidote is in the city. They kind of just can only try to save this man or prevent it from spreading. Okay. And then what else? I believe Morgul and Basil, they kind of went to look for maybe travelers that had gone through the White Cancel Marshes or any like people maybe from there. So they went to one of the taverns in the first level, which is like the least well off, kind of the farmers and the common folk like that. And let's see, what they really found out, I ended up kind of just like throwing out pieces of lore that I hadn't really prepared, but then I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. So let's see. There were some pieces of information they could find depending on where they investigated. And since they went to a tavern, I decided they met like this drunk dwarf who, I forget exactly what he gave them, but it wasn't a whole lot, just kind of, marshes are scary places, a lot of weird creatures going on. But then they also talked to a half-elf woman named Fiella, who is very interested in like folklore and mythology and like legends, stuff like that. So she was able to tell them a little bit. Since they asked about like hags and witches to the south, she knew a little bit. She knew kind of like some stories about the marshes. She also knows about like old Silas, who is a sea hag down in at the edges of the open maw, which is like the bay in Scaviros, like the seafaring kind of country. And then the Wacancel marshes are known for like shamans and druids who kind of follow the older ways, not necessarily like arcane or divine, but use like the power of like nature and like the natural properties of your body, etc. And then she told them about rumors of like 3 marsh keepers who are elves that kind of preserve the wilderness around the Wacancel marshes, which is a pretty key point. And then also, I kind of made this up, that the lake that Thurnissa, the capital of the marshes, is built upon is Lake Illyria. And so Lake Illyria is named for Lady Illyria, who once upon a time led a lot of people from Scaviros to the marshes and purified this poisoned lake by like kind of like sacrificing herself. And so she drowned within the lake, like is purified, and then there's a rumor that her spirit still resides in the lake, along with some sort of treasure or a rare artifact, which I also have a plan for. I'm really excited for this. Okay. So that is what they found out about that. Also, let me see, Ivar, he went to go research a little bit about like the creatures of the marsh. He went to the Found Archives, found a little bit about some marsh creatures, specifically, he found out some, so here, Valhyria, they looked at some botany, so I gave them some of like the fantastical plants that I had come up with, like the mire root, which is like a purple magenta-y root that can grow underwater, and that like kind of emits a liquid or like a sap when you cut it that is corrosive but fine when immersed in clean water. Also like rot caps, which is a kind of a gray, almost like parasitic mushroom that preys upon like other types of fungi. So you have to keep them separate, otherwise they kill other mushrooms you're trying to grow. And like all of these plants, I kind of have uses for, either in the swamp as like an effect or as ingredients in like potions or elixirs, kind of make the marshes a bit more interesting. Also, fantastical herbology is like really awesome to do, but I might have mentioned that in my previous video. But okay. And then lastly, Ivar, he researched monsters particularly found a passage about the Catoblepas, which is a monster in the monster manual. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like got a boar-like head, but like this really long neck. It's quadrupedal, and then it has like this tail with like this like large kind of like bludgeon at the end of it, and it has kind of a death glare that could kill you. I am going to modify this one a bit because I don't necessarily want to just like have one roll be instant death if they fail, so I mean it should be fine. Their constitutions are decent, but we'll see. So because I wanted to make that an encounter, and it felt a little unfair to kind of just like throw that at them, / I didn't really like think of any more interesting creatures in the swamp, because I didn't want to give away like what was necessarily all possible, since some of it like they wouldn't have encountered, and then or like some of it people don't know about, and then some of it is just kind of like the standard swampy beasts, or yeah. So that's what Ivar did, and then Tyrell, our other fighter, they wanted to look for like masks, basically like ventilation masks, which was possible. Like Liddy had some like a prototype mask when she works with dangerous poisons, so it's like, okay, you can find kind of similar like steampunky kind of masks from Jeroff, the gnomish inventor. He can make you some for 15 gold if you wanted 5 more, because he had one that he could lend them. So they found masks to kind of, then else they would like be able to filter out the harmful spores if they do come in contact with them. So I'll have to think of another way to try to infect my players. No, maybe. Well, we'll see. Okay, so that was all of their prep, and that prep took a bit longer than I expected. I didn't think they would go so in depth. I thought it'd kind of be like a simple downtime thing, but I think they got some decent information, and then so afterwards they got their horses and rode down to the marshes. Again, I kind of fast traveled the traveling from city to city because there's really not a lot going on. I could have planned like some encounters, and I did plan an encounter for like right before they got into like the heart of the marsh, but I don't know, they were kind of like off the road. There's not a lot going on, and I didn't want to like give them another thing to maybe pursue or look at, because A, I don't think they would go for it, and B, I don't feel like making an encounter. Well, I could have planned for an encounter maybe that was important later on, but I just didn't have anything. I didn't prep it. So I fast traveled them down to the marshes. And so then what I had prepared was like a little tribe, a little kind of town, I guess, on the outskirts, in the marsh, but like more on the outskirts, not in the dead center like Flornissa is. So this is like a little tribe, city, not city, it's like a little village called Ristmore, and it's inhabited by this tribe of furbolgs, and these furbolgs, they meet like this little girl named Charlie Willow, and I got to use my like little Rose voice, which is Jester's voice basically. So she's like really sweet and bubbly, and she like introduces them to her grandmama, who is the grand healer Willow. So this tribe has like 3 families: Willow, Fern, and blah, blah, blah. Let me actually look at my notes. Yeah, Nyala, Willow, Ophelsa, Fern, and Rigdarius Sage. Those are the 3 grand healers of the tribe. So the Sage family, they specialize in like condition removal and purification of the body. The Fern family specializes in finding antidotes for diseases, and the Willows specialize in resurrection and like raising the dead. So I put in this option that this is a tribe of healers because A, our party did not take the diamond, so they have no way to res anybody. And in this world that I made to be based off of Dark Souls, kind of inspired by Dark Souls, and to be hard mode, that's very dangerous. So I came up with an alternate way for resurrection and working out some details for it, because I don't want this to be just like a scapegoat, like, oh hey Leah, let's go visit the tribe to raise our dead. So there is going to be like an RP element of it, a potential quest finding if they don't have the proper ingredients, etc. So, and there's a limited number of times each person can be brought back before they're gone forever. So you don't necessarily want to use up all 3 of your reses, because even if you're, I don't know, you say you die 3 times in a month, at the 4th time you're gone. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out. I don't think they'll need it, and I have some time to prepare the details. But yeah, we'll see how well that works out. Because I don't want them to just be able to go to this tribe for like everything. And if they do need like a healing or a specific antidote or something, I want them to have to kind of work for it, because it's not going to come easy. Okay, so there's that. So in this part, the tribe part, I found RP a little bit awkward, just because, well, it wasn't too bad, because when they were trying to find out more information about like these mushrooms and kind of not so, and like kind of trying to find out about whatever happened to Miss Gore, like kind of subtly. They didn't say like outright like, oh, he's been poisoned, but they were just like, oh, like I need help sleeping, or like talking about these mushrooms, kind of like that, which is good. And so we talked about that, but then after they kind of got their information and were going to set out in the morning, I gave them a guide, which kind of undermined the prep that I did for like rolling about swamp travel, but whatever, it felt correct to do at the time. So then it was kind of awkward after that, because they didn't really try to talk to anyone or like that, and I wanted to be able to introduce like what this tribe could do as a potential resource, since it has definitely potions and elixirs and stuff like that that are difficult to get elsewhere. I mean, yes, they have Ferney, but still she can't get everything in a timely fashion, and if you know like where to get something, it's easier than like trying to find it. So I kind of like had to like force explain what the 3 families did, and the fact that there were potions and elixirs and stuff like that available. I don't think it really took. I had Chari kind of go like, oh, do you want a tour of the village, kind of? And she kind of led them around, talking about, she introduced them to her parents, because I also wanted to introduce like a quest that they could kind of do along the way of their mushroom quest, which was the Kotoblopas quest, because they are in need of this flower called a soul bell, which they use in their resurrection rituals, which I've planned out some now. But there's rumors, sightings of 1 or 2 Kotoblopas in that grove of flowers, and they can't get what they need. So they wanted to ask them, if possible, to drive them away or kill them or whatever. And the Kotoblopas, also, it does link into their current quest, they just don't know it yet. Yeah. But that felt very like, they weren't like saying anything or like engaging with the people there about like maybe what abilities they had or like what rituals they could perform, etc. So it was really hard to try to get that in. But I forced it a little bit and they agreed to do it. Not sure if because I forced it or because they were actually like, okay, yes, we can do this for you since it's along the same path that we're taking. But anyways, afterwards they take a long rest this morning, so they start up again. Rendry, who is their Firbolg guide, who is not a fighter, he's a forager, so he doesn't really add anything to combat, which I like. With his knowledge of the swamps, he's able to kind of lead them pretty easily without many dangers, so I didn't roll on my like swampy encounter or have them really roll like any kind of survival check to try and navigate, since he could kind of do that for them. This is a path that he's traveled a lot to get to this grove that they get these mushrooms from. And I think I did a little bit better with travel and like making it interesting, at least descriptively. So just talking kind of about like how the ground here and there is like sludgy and muddy, and occasionally you hear like the sound of wing beats overhead. Perception check, roll a dice that maybe pretend or not, and say, oh, you're fine, or oh, you don't hear much except for the sound of like, I don't know, like birds flying overhead, or wing beats, or insects buzzing, etc. But eventually they do hear some noises coming ahead that are coming toward them, like bushes rustling or plants rustling, and like deer start to kind of leap toward them, like they're running away from something. So they stay and they watch, and then one of the deer ends up kind of getting caught in a root that's like I can't speak right now. In a root that's kind of obscured by some of the bugs and the underbrush, and so it gets trapped, and then they see this like shambling mound of vegetation and vines and leaves and stuff like that come and like start to devour this deer whole. They kind of decide to fight, so we stop right as we roll initiative. And so that was what happened in session 11. As of now, we've actually played session 12 already, so I've already done a lot of we've already played session 12, but I've before for session 11, I'd actually done a lot more prep than this, so I have maybe the next 2 or 3 sessions planned out, so 12 and 13, maybe 14 planned out, depending on where they get. But yeah, getting to prep for a place that's not the keep and that's less like politics involved and more like creepy fantasy mystery with like cool plants and herbology involved was a lot more fun, and I'm enjoying it a lot more. I think it's cool to be able to kind of show more of the world to my players now, and maybe this will help them to kind of get like a sense of maybe where they want to go or what they want to do in the world. I haven't done some backstory stuff in a while because A, it's a little bit difficult to bring in some of their things, and B, it's difficult to bring some of them in because some of them don't really have stories, and they're not really in the part of the world where their story elements would trigger. They have to venture out into different areas of the world for that. And then I do have some plans for, I think, Valkyrie and Tyrell's backstory, since they're a little bit connected, but they're not that they know. And then I should probably give Basil a nightmare every now and then. But yeah, it all kind of depends on what they want to do. But yeah, so I'll probably film session 12 pretty soon after this, since I've already prepped it and we've already played it. But hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like following along with my campaign and what's been going on with our party. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if there's any interesting fantastical plants that you've made or come upon that you think are really cool and their effects, and maybe I'll steal it, but I could always use some fantastical like inspiration for these kinds of things. So I will see you in the next video. Bye!